Hi, it's Brian Rose from London Real. This week we have visual art creative Alexander Ward. He's here to talk about his film Tierra Vida, an Ayahuasca Journey. Check it out. Hello and welcome to London Real. My name is Brian Rose. Joining me is the world champion, Nick Gabriel. And in studio today is visual art creative and filmmaker, Mr. Alexander Ward, who is also the director and producer of Tierra Vida, an Ayahuasca Journey. Welcome.
Thank you for having me.
You know, I have to say, I think you are our guest with the poshest accent.
Is that so?
Indeed, in a big way. You know, a lot of people know you because we posted your film, which is a 25-minute film, I believe, about your journey down to Peru and ayahuasca. And I was just curious how that came about, and was that your first film? And if you could just tell us a bit about the making, because it was really personal. And I think that's what draws people into it.
Yeah, I mean...
And Nick and I must have watched 100 videos on ayahuasca before we went in. Mm-hmm. And so we've seen them all.
I think I did the same to sort of prepare and get all this knowledge of ayahuasca.
So you guys think maybe it would have been a better idea to not watch any videos?
I think so, yes, because I think, with the ayahuasca experience, it's so deeply personal for each individual. I mean, you can be in a ceremony with a group, you could all be drinking from the same brew with the same shaman, and you can be absolutely guaranteed that the person right next to you is having a completely different experience. So I think it would be good to get the data from these documentaries, but really just to go there yourself and just deal with the raw data of the direct experience yourself.
I stopped watching like the last week. Nick, you were sending me a few videos and I was like, that's enough. I didn't want to see any more pictures of what it looked like. I just was like, I'm just going to go in and see what happens.
I think also a lot of people, when they go and have this experience, sort of the next morning, they're like, it just wasn't what I expected at all.
Really?
Yeah.
Do you think that's because of the media had shown them?
I think so. It's because of all this media people consume, and they have certain expectations of what this will be like. I know I certainly did.
You know, you articulated so many things that I couldn't about the experience. And one thing that I watched your video after we did it, and you said, I was telling Nick earlier, that it's not a hallucinogenic experience because when your eyes are open, I didn't see anything that wasn't logical. It didn't compute. We had a dog running around, and like the dog wasn't talking to me like the son of Sam or anything.
As people would want you to believe.
Yeah, and it wasn't like that. It wasn't great. When you close your eyes, I saw lots of visions, but it wasn't.
And you can still see things in your peripheral vision sometimes?
Yeah, and things were blurry and accentuated, but I wasn't seeing things that weren't there.
Well, I mean, it's my understanding that the only reason we didn't have a full-on hallucinogenic experience is that we didn't take enough, because a friend of mine was saying, like, he said to me the night before, he said, make sure you take enough to get out. And I was like, what do you mean? He was like, enough to get out of your, like, your sensory perception. And I've heard from a couple of guys who've done some crazy shit. Like this one dude was telling me he was riding this giant dragonfly in another dimension, like literally flying on it. And I was like, that sounds pretty hallucinogenic to me.
I don't think that's hallucinogenic.
You don't?
No. I mean, well, can you explain?
That's all like an inward journey. He's not actually physically riding this dragonfly.
Of course, yeah. I mean, he was in another dimension. But,
of course,
yeah. I don't know.
I definitely didn't see things, but when I closed my eyes, it was completely different.
I mean, there's different experiences. You can, if you're in this sort of environment in a dark room, eyes closed, you have a very inward journey. But there's also the sense, if you take these things in nature, I would advise many people to try and do this. Go out camping in a deep nature environment, and you will begin to see nature with almost new eyes, because we go through so much life kind of in autopilot of all these social conditionings we picked up and all these habits that have grown out of this. And it's suddenly like we're shaken out of this sort of autopilot mode, and we see the natural world for how it really is. And it's just, you become so amazed. Everything, it's not like you're getting high and docile. Things seem almost hyperreal, and you're seeing things not through your perception of how you think, but really how they actually are.
Yeah, we were in an urban environment, so we didn't get to see that nature the next day. I mean, I looked at it. I did go out to parks and things the next day, but we weren't submerged in the jungle.
I know people say, like, we're all nature, so it's all the same thing, but it's not quite the same thing. Tables, chair don't sort of bustle with the same kind of life that leaves and all these sort of things do.
I'm reminded of an account I read by a guy who moved to the Amazon, and every time he walked into the forest or into the jungle, everything would just go silent. And he asked one of the guides, one of the the tribesman who was his guide for his time there, why is this happening? And he said, because the forest can hear the city on you, and it can smell the city on you, and you still have that violence in your mind. And he said it took like a few months before he'd walk into the jungle, and then there would be no change. Everything would just continue because he had to acclimatize. And I thought that was kind of interesting.
That's really interesting. Wow.
You know, how did you make this film, and why? And when was your first ayahuasca experience? How'd you find all this stuff?
Okay, that's a many-part question. If I start first in why I decided to create this, I was at the time creating, and still am, an ayahuasca graphic novel. And a graphic novel is an attempted grown-up term for a comic book. But it's a really nice method because it utilizes artwork and the visual portrayal of these words, but also the in-depth monologue of the written word that can get really in-depth in what you're thinking.
Is the document that you see early on in your video, is that the precursor to the graphic novel?
In a way, but this is kind of separate. I mean, as I was producing this, I found out, you know, many people not familiar with this, it takes so much time to sort of produce all these things, especially with animation. I mean, it took me and a group of 3 others 6 months to make 4 minutes of animation. This stuff takes a long time. And I found that as I sort of created artwork for one instance, one ayahuasca experience, I'd have another 2 or 3 more experiences. And then when I finished that, another 5 more would come. And I just wasn't getting the data out quick enough that I was bringing in. So I just thought that this isn't working. Just get the camera, start speaking, and just see where it goes. And I think what also the ayahuasca does, it kind of gets rid of a lot of labels you might be associating yourself with. You know, I studied animation. I worked in animation. I thought I am an animator. Everything I do will be animation. And it told me that this is not the case. You can do whatever. And then you get brought into different modes of thinking and different ways of creating various work. And I mean, that was such a different experience for me. 2 years ago, I would have never even thought I would have gone in front of a camera. I mean, 2 years ago, if I was sitting here, you guys would not be able to get a single word out of me. I always hid behind my artwork.
Interesting.
And that's
true? That's true of a lot of artists or animators, do you think, that they hide a bit behind it?
I mean, you get a whole broad range of artists, but I mean, a lot of artists will be the sort of shy, retiring type that I was, always hiding behind. But artwork was a case of what I couldn't connect with people in person, I could create artwork, and this was a form of connecting with people.
Okay. Wow.
And the ayahuasca brought about, you know, that what I really wanted deep down was to connect with people and to sort of bring that out, and that's something I've been working on ever since, really.
How have you? So at this point now, how are you connecting with people? Is it through the video, or do you have a better communication ability since you're?
A much better communication ability by far. I got this posh accent due to ayahuasca.
How can it make you communicate better? Did
it really just opens you up quite a lot, and it allows you to be much more honest with people, and yeah.
Wow. And that was, 2 years ago, your first experience?
2 years ago, a completely different type of person I was then.
And did you fly to Peru to do that?
I flew to Peru. Actually, my first psychedelic experience was not with the ayahuasca. It was actually with the psilocybin mushroom. 2 years ago, I began to get involved with the project. And this was a project that Graham Hancock was involved with, and also another man you might not be familiar with called Simon Powell. And he's written a couple of books on the psilocybin mushroom.
I've heard that name. I haven't read any of his works.
The Simon Powell.
Yeah, Simon Powell.
Okay.
Yeah.
He's probably another good guest that might be worth going on. So through the communication with these guys, I just was brought into a completely different world, and all this new data was coming towards me. And myself, along with the Simon Powell gal, went to the Lake District, where psilocybin mushroom just grows everywhere.
Really?
And it's a really beautiful place, and it's hugely a native mushroom. And I find it no coincidence that the mushroom grows in these really beautiful landscapes, and it's almost, in a sense, like the mushroom receives this beautiful sight that it receives and gives it back to you in the case of this, hugely powerful and beautiful psychedelic experience. And so the first time was with the psilocybin mushroom deep in nature. And it's as I said, you can have this very inward journey, or if you're in nature, you have a very outward journey where you gain a new perspective, and you get to see the external world with new eyes. And so from that instance, I was like, yes, let's book a flight to Peru and see what this ayahuasca.
So it was based on that project, got you curious about it, and then you went up there and took that on your own?
I did, yeah.
Okay. How was that first experience?
With ayahuasca.
No, with psilocybin.
I was brought into a huge feeling of peace. The psychedelic experience really brings you into the now moment, and it shakes off all these, autopilot modes that I was talking about, and really into the current moment. And to be in the current moment, you really have to accept how it is in the moment, how everything is, and in that acceptance, there is a lot of peace. And it just picked up, all these things I was worrying about, things that didn't matter. It was just all shed from my being, and it's just like a huge weight off myself.
Did that have a lasting effect, or?
Yeah, it definitely has a lasting effect.
Okay.
It's something that really stays with you.
What I should have said is, did the effect last? Did that specific effect last? Like that feeling of having all those inconsequential worries shed from your being, did that carry over?
I think it does, but I mean, in the type of world we live in, it's so easy to pick up these things again. They just come into our being all the time. It's amazing how many little chips on our shoulders we pick up here and there.
Alex, I wanted to ask you something. A couple of weeks ago, I received one of those Facebook photos that's making its rounds. I think you might have seen it as well, Brian. It's a picture of 4 natives of the Amazon, and they're all plucking or pulling arrows towards the sky, aiming at something. There's 5 of them. They're pretty naked except for the little loincloth. Mm-hmm. And then there's a bunch of text which says, no homeless, no depression, no anxiety, no traffic jams, etc. Yeah. And yet we call them primitive.
Yeah.
And I wanted to ask you, from your time spent in the jungle with these people, do they seem, in your opinion, happier than us in the West, who are in this rat race and have all this amazing stuff and all this disposable income and 50 different kinds of hamburger that we can go and buy on the street? I mean, do they seem happier and more at peace, honestly, in your opinion?
I think yes. I would have to say initially yes. And I think it's all in the sense of living in a symbiotic and correct relationship to the natural world that's not at odds. And they're much more in tune with how they are at the very moment. And I mean, their religion for them is kind of, how do I say this? I mean, the way of communicating with God is to look with God within themselves, where us in this modern society is sort of put it far away on some sort of plateau where, this connection with God and the source is all sort of far away from us.
That's interesting.
Do you think that's a product of the ayahuasca experience itself? Because you were saying at the end of the film how it almost takes religion out of the equation, because you almost go direct to the spirit. Yeah. Inside you, and you don't have this constructed religion to kind of go through. Mm-hmm. Or could you explain a bit more of that point that you made at the end of your film?
Okay, well, I mean, I think you touched on a little bit in your ayahuasca video also, when you talked about this God source. You tap into what this is, and it really seems that there is this sort of ego construct, and this ego, which is ourselves, has grown out of these social conditionings and the habits that we have grown out of these social conditionings. And this has created this false notion of what is self. But it seems the more you experience with the ayahuasca, the more you notice this kind of observer of the self. And this is tuning into what is sort of the higher self. And people use the phrase, a unique aspect of God. It is really opening to your eyes that what you are really deep down and fundamentally and forever is the entire works. Mm-hmm. You're a conscious aspect of the universe that is now able to look back and observe itself. And I remember leading up to the ayahuasca, it was these certain messages by people like Alan Watts, Osho, and Krishnamurti. And these were very liberating at times, but it is actually with the direct experience of this that is truly liberating. Mm. I've had many aspects where you sort of look at the stars and you realize that what you're really looking back on is yourself.
Oh, that's cool. I mean, I guess it's like Brian and I always say, you can understand something intellectually, but until you've experienced it, you know what I mean? It's just,
that's why I say it's important for people. Well, it's good to sort of, watch all these ayahuasca documentaries if you don't have the direct experience, which I believe is one of the most important experience a human being can have. Then you are missing something very important about what it is to be human. And
it could be taken a whole step further. Brian and I listened to a band called Tool, and they have this one track called Vicarious.
I think they used Alex Gray's artwork in that, and they produced animation for it.
But the whole song is about how like we live our whole lives vicariously through television, right? And tabloids and all that other crap. Like we get our kicks from watching other people's misery and joy and pain and success and victories instead of going out there and living life ourselves. And I guess doing things like ayahuasca is just turning your back on that in an extreme way, right? What do you think?
And it also takes out a lot of these these constructs you have around, like, you know, I know you had some religious, not baggage that you brought with you, but you had a whole construct of your whole childhood.
That was baggage.
Religion.
Okay, that was baggage.
Yeah, I didn't bring that, but like I went directly to this source, and I don't even know what it told me, you know, because it didn't actually tell me, but it showed me or whatever. But
You just felt its presence?
yeah, I felt this presence, and it was with me, and it's still with me somehow. I mean, we're 2 months now since our experience, and honestly, it seems like it seems some way a long time ago, and a short time ago. And I know I feel very differently now than I did the day after, because the day after I wrote it all down, and we did the episode 3 days later. And
I remember it was the first time I experienced this. It was I had like 7 to 8 ceremonies, and then it was like a year later until I had the next set of experiences.
Okay.
And in that year, my rational mind just started to kick in and just started to tell myself it wasn't real. It didn't really happen. It was all in your head. And somehow I managed to get back on the plane and experience that again. And when you go through the experience, you have this overwhelming idea that, God, this really is real. This is really happening. And I remember it was at the end of my second set of ayahuasca ceremonies. I think I must have been up to 20 or so ceremonies at that point. And I'd always kept a bit of distance from it. I realized that, you know, there is this real life and there is this ayahuasca experience. And I sort of always separated the two in my mind. And then towards the end, I had this huge feeling really started to kick in that, oh my God, this really actually happened. This is all really real. And I had a mini breakdown in the kitchen of this ayahuasca retreat.
Breakdown? What kind of breakdown?
Oh, not like a full-blown breakdown, just like, I can't believe it's really real. And
So like the two, because I know what you mean. It was like we had that ayahuasca time and I saw this, and now I'm back to my normal life and I'm this way.
Yeah,
But what, you realized that they were the same? Or you're
Yeah.
now the same person?
just the fact that it was all really real, that it really happened.
Okay.
And
You know what I'm reminded of is how our shaman, she goes to work with the ayahuasqueros in the Amazon, and she spends like, did she say 3 weeks or a month, like just drinking the whole time?
Every day, yeah.
Every
like
day.
a month. Yeah,
I
she'll
wonder
do
if
every
she
day.
starts to confuse like reality or this dimension with the ayahuasca dimension. I mean, that must just be
I think
incredible.
the first place I went to was a place called the Refugio Altiplano. This is in Iquitos. And the guy who owns the place, a guy called Scott Peterson, and he's gone through a lot of his own shamanic initiation. And they have just these amazing wooden constructs at the Refugio Altiplano. I spent my 2 weeks there living in a treehouse atop the canopy in the jungle, which is just an amazing
That must
experience.
have been cool.
And this guy...
Do you ever get bored down there?
you might get a bit complacent, and because there's just no distractions. But
Only boring people get bored, right?
there's always
I just watched your video and I'm like, oh my gosh, it's like thinking like 7 or 10 days, and you're doing an ayahuasca ceremony every night and then during the day. But
I mean,
guess
you're recovering because
Yeah, I
it
guess
takes
you
a
are.
lot out of you, you know. But this guy, he's spent 60 days and nights drinking ayahuasca every single night in this tree house,
60.
and he said by the end of it, he was pretty sideways. Yeah.
60 days. Yeah, I mean, Nick and I are newbies. You know, we've done one, and we did it in an urban environment.
Doing
So,
it again soon, though.
Yeah, well, Nick wants to go back. You wanted to go back
Nick
the next
is going
day.
back.
Nick is going back. And I know I should go back because I'm mean reverting. It's an old term we used to use in the city. Like, I know I'm going back. I'm taking a lot with me, but I know I've lost a lot of what I've seen, and I need to see it again. What do they say? The shamans say you should be having it every 2 months. Is that correct? Or you should never be away from ayahuasca for that long?
It's something that stays with you for a long time. I mean, just with the ayahuasca, it's not what people need to understand, it's not some sort of magic pill where people take it and it's like, I'm enlightened. It's not like that at all. It works its way through your system for a long time, and certain things only really began to come into fruition for me like quite a while after.
I can agree with that.
Ayahuasca.
Don't you notice the same thing?
But she said 4 to 6 weeks, and I felt it definitely 4 weeks and 5 weeks.
Yeah.
It might be ideal, but we just don't have access to
Yeah.
ayahuasca that much.
And now you're off for 3 months to Peru? Or what does your next 6 months look like?
Okay, so next week I'm flying off to Peru to shoot some more short film footage.
Is this for another film?
Yes.
Okay.
It'll be another short film.
Do people ever sit you down and say, Alex, you need to move on from the ayahuasca?
Perhaps. I mean, I still work a lot in the commercial industry with my artwork. So most of the people I communicate with on a day-to-day basis have no kind of understanding with this ayahuasca business. And when it sort of crops up and I talk to them about it, it ultimately boils down to, so you're going to the jungle to get high? Is that what you're doing? As if anybody would conceivably pay all this money to fly to the jungle with man-eating bugs and all this sort of thing and get high in the jungle. It's just not.
What do you say to that? I mean, because you're very specific in your film about how this is not a drug, and we associate that word drug with so many things. So what do you say to these people?
I mean, it's not their fault. It's just the culturally perceived propaganda that people have put out about these things. And then you just try to explain really what it is, essentially. I mean, if you go down to the jungle to these shamans and you come and bring these ideas that these things are drugs, you know, you're going to get a big mouthful from these people. This is your hallucination that the propaganda is given to you. It's just not like this.
Mm-hmm. So you're open with people about what you're doing, and you tell them about the ayahuasca lifestyle.
I mean, you have to gauge certain people's, you know, you can't talk to people about it, to all types of people. I mean, especially if you're trying to get a job in the art industry, it's not something you bring out all the time. So.
All right, so you're going down for 3 months specifically to shoot footage, or you do?
Yeah, I've teamed up with this girl who she has gone through her own shamanic training, an apprenticeship of sorts.
Is that something you're interested in doing ever?
We'll see.
What about you, Nick?
Dude, you know what? I've asked myself that question many times, but I'm kind of reluctant because there's a lot of responsibility that comes with that. And I personally believe that if you take on that role, you will open yourself to attack by like entities that don't want people to be enlightened. And I don't know if I'm strong enough of an individual to do that at this point. Maybe when I'm like 45 and I'm like a Jedi Knight. But right now, not so much.
This is actually an aspect of ayahuasca that people should probably be aware of, that there is these kind of battles between shaman. The ayahuasca's been brought down by all this sort of black magic and witchcraft stuff. If you're going through the shamanic training, you have shaman attacking you with these little magical darts that they use for the experience.
Can you explain that?
Okay, well, I'll talk about this one girl that I'm going to film about who went through a shamanic training. She was with the shaman one night, and they went to visit another shaman in a hut. And they went through this ayahuasca experience with this person, this other shaman. And as they were walking back through the jungle, back to where they lived, suddenly the shaman just keeled over in pain. And it was like, that bugger, he's attacked me. He set this dart against me. And she didn't.
Did he say that? Did he say, that bugger?
Yeah, I mean...
in Spanish.
In Spanish, of course, however it goes. And what the other shaman was trying to do, he wanted to show his supremacy over this other shaman, to show that he was a better shaman.
You know, our shaman said something interesting to us, and she said ayahuasca doesn't really dictate how it's used. So it can be used for good or dark purposes, and that's scary because, I don't know about you, Brian, but to me the idea that something as powerful as that being used malevolently is terrifying.
Because you felt a little helpless in there. Oh, yeah. No, we needed to be with the right person, you know, most definitely. I mean, do you see things that you don't like about the industry, or when you go down? I mean, I know there's been a rise in what is it, shamanic tourism. Yeah. When you go down there, is there some things that really bother you, or this infighting between camps, or? Yeah,
I mean, there is this whole. It has become quite a business there, and there are various people that own like the shaman, and that you have, if you want to have business with the shaman, you have to go through this person to
like an
use the
agent.
service. Yeah, like an agent.
Really?
And they pay peanuts to these shaman. They take all the money for themselves, and it's okay if you play by their game because you're like a cash cow for them. But as soon as you try and go behind their back and try and access these shaman directly, that's where these problems can come.
Wow.
On a different note, you know, I see that having watched your video, I was very impressed by your artwork, and I wanted to ask you, did you feel that your creative abilities were augmented because of your ayahuasca experience? And the reason I ask is because I noticed that my right brain was being activated in some strange way, and I know that that's linked to the creative ability. Did you notice anything like that? Were you better at drawing? Were you better at writing? Anything like that?
I mean, it wasn't. I mean, I did go with the intentions of trying to get better at artwork, but it wasn't so much that the experiences changed my artwork. It more changed myself as a person, what I wanted to achieve with the artwork. I mean, before I took ayahuasca, I seemed to be producing art for the sake of producing better art, to be a better artist. And I remember in ayahuasca ceremonies this was brought up, and I was just thinking, why on earth am I even doing this? Why am I producing artwork? And it really opened me up to what I actually wanted to do with my artwork. And so it wasn't so much the artwork, but myself as a person, and that in turn changed my artwork.
What did you conclude that you wanted to do?
I mean, the ayahuasca is very good for receiving direction in life, but what people might come to realize quite early on is that there is a difference between what you want as an egoic mind and actually what the heart wants on a deep down, soulful level. And so even though I did come and I wanted to be this better artist, what I really wanted deep down was to connect with people and share experiences with people. And so it was to try and achieve that, what I wanted deep down.
It's interesting.
Yeah.
I mean, how many people do you think are out there striving for things that they probably don't really even want, Brian?
Lots. I mean, I see it these days, and I mean, I'll just make jokes to myself, just thinking, man, like I could use a little ayahuasca. But, you know, obviously it's not my call. It's something that someone has to be drawn to. Mm-hmm. But, yeah, I mean, the more and more I see it, it's just interesting. I mean, how old are you, Alex?
25.
Okay. It's just interesting to see, like, at 25, I would have never had a realization like he's having, you know. And for me, it took many more years where I was like, oh, this whole world's not just about me and my ego, you know. And so it's...
What? That's happened?
What? Who? Where am I?
The ayahuasca will really break that down.
It really will, right? And so it's just
quite a terrifying way as well.
Yeah, it's kind of refreshing to hear, you know, someone, you know, actually, you know, your age just being like, okay, wow, there's another purpose going on here, and I want to kind of go toward it. And it's just such a positive thing. And yeah, I wish everyone could get a little bit of that. But, you know, I don't know why. Is that just me projecting my ayahuasca ego on other people?
Could be, huh?
I don't know. I mean, I think artists, more than most people, have to deal with the problems of ego because it's the kind of profession where non-artists are always constantly in awe of, in a sense. I mean, it's not like, you know, you can be the most amazing accountant and you'll still receive less praise than the most mediocre of artists. And so I think artists have to deal with that problem quite a bit. And
it's interesting.
How are you dealing with, so you created Tierra Vida, and then it was uploaded by Graham Hancock on his website. You know, Graham is obviously a big proponent of ayahuasca, and he got you a lot of exposure, I think, by doing that. Mm-hmm. And how are you finding that media exposure? Because you said you were behind the camera, or behind the artwork. What is it behind the artwork? What is it, a palette or something? I don't know. Before that, but now you're like the filmmaker guy. You know, how has that been for you?
It's certainly been an interesting experience, and yeah, I guess when you receive all the praise from comments, it naturally feeds into your ego. You just have to always be constantly aware and observe all these feelings that arise in you, and make sure, you know, it's like talking back to the ayahuasca, like remind me, don't let me be consumed by this ego.
Wow. It's interesting because we're in a weird kind of space like that. I mean, Nick and I kind of created this about 8 months ago, and it's getting like lots of positive feedback, and like, you know, it's. Every time we get positive feedback, it's just like we just feel like we're doing something good that brings everybody else along. And if that one show made them meet somebody or try something new, then that's just like a great positive energy we're feeding out there.
Yeah, I mean, it's like these new things we're creating. It's not really for us. It's kind of, you know, we're creating things that for information for other people or that they can apply to their own life. And
that's the best part of it.
Yeah, if it helps other people, then...
And what's your next goal? You're going to document this woman on her
Shaman. Yeah, sorry, we skipped past that.
That's right. We do that all the time.
So this woman, she's called Rebecca Shaman, and she has a book out called The Shaman's Last Apprentice.
Her last name is Shaman?
Yeah.
That's awesome. A coincidence.
That's like a rapper having the last name Money.
Yeah, I'm not going to change my name to Alex Flower Moonbeam Starseed or something like this.
Well, the award does have magical or mystical connotations anyway, doesn't
really,
it?
Does it?
Yeah, award is something that keeps away evil spirits.
That's true.
Powerful. The chosen one.
I think most people who have the ayahuasca experience do have the idea and the realization that, wow, I'm God, I'm the chosen one, but it's not referring to you as an ego, it's referring to what is behind you, the higher self, the self that is connected to all life. And it's something that the ego might try and grab at, but it's almost like a little test of the ayahuasca to see if the ego will grab onto that.
Do people have that feeling?
I think so.
That after their first couple of times with the ceremony, that they feel they are godlike?
I think if they interpret...
You just feel like that all the time, right?
Oh, yeah, well.
After your flotation tank, is there.
But it's like people only feel like that after ayahuasca.
I had a
Dude, all the
humbling
time.
feeling with ayahuasca. I didn't feel like any kind of empowerment with ayahuasca.
Okay. Well, I mean, it's if, however, the person interprets the messages. I mean, the ayahuasca is not a goal in itself. It's all what the person does with the information provided from the ayahuasca and how they apply it to their life.
Okay.
Interesting.
So you're going to document her journeys. I was wondering what you're doing.
Yeah, so she ended up going to a psychic because she was going to Peru, and the psychic told her, if you go to Peru, all I see is misery and death for you. If you stay here in London, you have a nice career in banking. So naturally, she went to Peru. She didn't want to go in banking. I mean, who does?
Yeah, that's a career in death.
And she was working in Machu Picchu, and she went through all these series of events where she went through a bit of a breakdown. She didn't know what to do, and she called out to the mountain. It's like, please show me the way. Show me what I need to do. And she hears a voice in her head saying, come deep into the jungle, and it's time for you to begin your journey, and I will show you the way. And after a whole series of events, she's following the source of this voice, and she ends up deep in the jungle of Iquitos, about 8 hours from the main town, interacting with the shaman, who greets her and says, welcome, Rebecca, it is I who called you.
Come on.
It's how it went. This is how it went in the book, but I don't know. And then, so from that, she went into a shamanic apprenticeship and started to learn all the values from the shaman. And unfortunately, the shaman is now dead, but the shaman's wife, who is also in her own right a shaman, we are going to film this whole instance of her reconnecting with this shamanic family.
And her training.
No, she's already gone through the training,
has.
and she's just now returning.
What is the training like?
So the shaman often takes on apprentices to teach them all the values of how to heal people in the shamanic way. How a shaman will heal is the ayahuasca that the shaman takes and the ayahuasca that the patient takes communicates with each other, and this connects the shaman and the patient together. And the shaman, through this process, learns to feel the pain of the patient and where they are feeling it in their body. And from this, the shaman heals this certain location of the pain in their own body, thus healing it in the patient's body.
Well, okay.
I'm definitely not. My personality's not cut out to be a shaman.
Yeah, I don't see you like healing people and being too concerned about their issues.
I mean, with our shaman, I was just amazed. She gave so much in that ceremony. I mean,
Right.
like, she's like, I call her the hardest working girl in showbiz afterwards as like a joke, because like she was like 5 hours singing, healing us, sucking
hard
evil
work.
energy out of us, putting burning stuff in our eyes, shooting burning stuff up our nose.
I just had this image of Brian as the shaman in a ceremony going, what? You worried about your relationship with your mother? Man the fuck up.
Drop and give me 20 push-ups. No,
I mean, you guys seem to went quite deep into the ayahuasca experience for your first try. A lot of people don't really go that deep into it.
Really, I think we had plenty, by the way.
Do you think so?
Yeah, I do.
By the sounds of it.
I
sounds
really
like
do,
you
yeah.
did.
And she told us later that she actually told us she was going to give us a mild version. I think not to freak us out, but she said she gave us a pretty hefty version. But I'm so glad that we did get that, and it had the light in it as well, because if we had had a or a lighter version, I'm glad we had what we had. And I know Nick is looking to go back, and I know I need to go back, but I'm not running back. And
Back to the same shaman, or you want
no,
to
back
go
to the experience. And I mean, I listened to your film again this morning, and you said it's something that some people kind of dread a little bit doing, not just because the taste is horrible, but I'm not running back in, even though I know I need to go back.
Yeah,
Does that
it's
make sense?
definitely daunting. I mean, there's many substances that we know of, alcohol, which numbs and allows people to escape for life, and then there are substances like ayahuasca, which makes people face reality beyond anything else, and for many that's a terrifying idea.
But you're
to
fine.
face life in its entirety like that.
You're ready to go?
Yeah. For me, it's not that I want to. It's that I know I have to do.
Because you just feel like you scratched the surface last time.
Yeah, I felt like I had to.
Yeah.
Really?
But that only gets stronger. Like after every single ayahuasca ceremony, it just feels like
just like crack
I
cocaine.
haven't even scratched the surface of this.
First one's free. Yeah. So how many ceremonies have you done?
I've done about 20 in total.
Have you ever done one in the UK, and would you?
I have done, yes.
Okay.
She's like ayahuasca black belt, dude.
I've actually experienced the actual smoked D.M.T. recently.
Well, what was that like?
How was that? Yeah.
Interesting, actually, and it actually has something quite related to London Real.
Okay.
as well. Because, I mean, as I said, this is all very new for me. I've always hidden behind my arc, so I was feeling a certain anxiety about coming on the show and anxiety about how I put myself out in public. You know, it's a very daunting thing to put yourself out in public like that. And so all these feelings were in me. And DMT, for the record, is hugely similar to the ayahuasca experience. What I would say is to really experience ayahuasca first, because if I hadn't, I could totally see why the DMT's experience would just be too daunting. I mean, it's as Terence McKenna used to say, the only thing to fear in a DMT experience is death by astonishment. I can totally see how that could be the case. But as I took DMT, I went to the exact same place as with the ayahuasca, and I actually continued on work as I started in an ayahuasca ceremony.
When you say you continued on work, what was that work characterized by?
It was a certain instance. So I'll introduce one in a particular ayahuasca ceremony. I was surrounded by all these kind of beings, these old shamanic ladies, and they were all around me, observing me. And they had these little cups, and they were scooping essences of myself out. I was this sort of pool of water. And within this, there was this kind of darkness, and they were showing it to me, like, look at this, look at this. And as I looked into it, all this darkness was sort of grown out, and it sort of came into my being and it consumed me. I had no idea what it was. And so this continued on with this DMT experience. As I went into this certain realm, this inner state, whatever you refer to it as.
So they'd kind of been like on pause.
Yeah, exactly that.
Wow. How did you take the DMT?
It is smoked in a sort of glass
Okay.
vapor pipe. And so I ended up in this exact same place, and they were like, Alex, okay, we really need to deal with this now. You've sort of been avoiding this.
Wow.
And so I was brought back into what this little darkness was. And the whole area was beautiful, colors of greens and with all these sacred patterns. And it was really light, and I felt good energy from it. But from this darkness, it was a very bad energy from it. And within this darkness, they're saying, look what we found, look what we found. And as I looked into this darkness, there was this kind of sharp knife-like object. And they said, pull it out, get rid of it. And it wasn't as if I reached out in reality and grabbed it. It's kind of, as I did, it was more the intention that sort of grabbed onto this. And as I pulled it out, a huge just relief just washed over me. And I realized at that point what it was all these little, this fear mentality and all this self-doubt, self-attacking behavior. And when I pulled it out, it was all gone, and all this worry I had was gone from it.
Dude, how can you not want to go back? Come on, bro. Let's go do this.
How long did this smoking DMT experience last? Because Nick has mentioned it. It's very quick.
It's very quick.
Like 15 minutes.
No. 3 minutes when you're in deep, and then after that you still have... still feels like you're tuned into it a little, and you can have very nice insights into yourself, but it's not the full-blown experience where you're in a different state completely.
But it's a positive experience.
Oh, yeah.
And it
definitely.
complemented your ayahuasca experience.
Yeah, it really did.
Wow.
And,
Interesting. But you're glad that you did it after your ayahuasca.
Yeah,
For
by
perspective
far. And
reasons.
and
stuff.
that's what I would advise people.
Okay.
Definitely.
Wow.
Because the ayahuasca it's very gentle with you. It's been characterized as having the personality of the grandmother, and it's very gentle with the soul. You know, for your first experience, regardless, you had a very heavy experience, but for many people, it's very gentle first. It's not going to make you deal with anything too painful. The first experience is kind of an introduction. The second is when you get to the core values of what you need to address in yourself. And the third will sort of conclude that. And then if you start to try and push into the ayahuasca further, the fourth one, it can get pretty heavy into some dark stuff.
Wow. Okay.
But yeah, there isn't really much to fear initially from the ayahuasca.
Interesting. I thought you were going to say that you went and pulled the blade out and it was London Real. That's what I thought you were going to say. I was like,
And it had Nick and Brian's name in it.
And they are the chosen ones. We found them at last.
that's making the highlight.
That's funny.
So, wow. Sorry. And that was recently.
Mm-hmm.
And how many months had it been before you had drank an ayahuasca?
The last time I drank ayahuasca was in the UK. This is when I was camping in Snowdonia. This was October the 28th, and I've not had experience since then.
So it was like 6 or 8 months later, and it was like, boom, you're right back there.
Yeah, right back there. There's it just feels like, you're just continuing on with the work, and it's just, you're back there in the same place, it's familiar, and it's like, this place again.
Wow. So, you got some perspective here. What does Alexander Ward need to contribute to the world, you think, in like the next 5 years? What is ideal that you want to have given back or have done?
it's just about being honest with people, sharing your experiences, and see if the feelings you have resonate with others. And there's just this huge connection. People are coming together, with the internet. It's like we have so much barriers of separation. It's all just falling apart, and people are really just connecting with people more and more now.
Interesting.
Wow. And you're going to go to Peru, and then you said you're going up to the States.
Yeah, so I figured I'm going to be dealing with a lot of people who have had experience with ayahuasca and other psychedelic agents as well. And what I want to do is film these people, get a lot of their perspectives, and start releasing this as short episodic videos online to YouTube. So we get the perspective of just regular people and their experiences with this. Because a lot of the things you see of ayahuasca, it's all the go-to intellectuals who have all this information on ayahuasca, but really just the regular people have just amazing stories that they've gone through with the ayahuasca.
I don't know if you want to hear from all the regular people, because I was looking for ayahuasca videos once, and there was some drunk chick. She looked like she just come from a couple of months partying in Thailand. She was like, I took ayahuasca last night and I didn't know if it did anything. And I was like, oh, do we really need to hear this? This is tarnishing the...
Yeah, I mean, I'm going around filming, and so if people, if they want to appear on camera, then sort of get in contact with me. I'll be traveling through America and Canada after Peru, and I got to find something to do. So, give me a call.
So you're giving your life to ayahuasca to spread the message.
For the time being, at least.
You're like the Jesus of ayahuasca, walking the earth and spreading knowledge with YouTube.
Yeah.
See what happens.
I mean, look at the hair and the beard and stuff.
I would follow him.
Yeah.
And wow, well, that's kind of cool. And what are you going to do professionally? Are you going to keep doing these projects?
I mean, I still take on a lot of freelance work. I'm actually just doing this at the moment, doing freelance work for various creative animation industries and all this. I think some of the stuff I'm doing now at the moment is the company that do the animations for the TED Talks and
that's cool,
the RSA Animate.
That RSA Animate thing's incredible, man.
Yeah,
I got to see one of these in person. They just blew me away.
Is that's the one you posted, right? On the Facebook group?
I think so, yeah. Or someone else posted and I commented on it. But I got to see this in person.
Brian, you got to check this out, man.
Yeah, it's very cool.
This is an amazing thing.
Really? Yeah. What's the one thing people don't know about animation? I mean, you've seen there and done it. You were saying earlier you spent 6 months on something that lasted 4 minutes.
Yeah, it's just that whole element. People just don't quite understand just how long it takes. And I often get offers for freelance jobs. It's like, hey, I saw your animation. I have an idea for a music video. Can you make this in a week? No, I can't do that.
How do you use it with technology? Because I've seen you do a lot of freehand drawing, and then how do you integrate that with technology to make the animation?
Well, I mean, I studied in traditional animation, like the Disney techniques, the old pencil to paper. It's a hugely laborsome techniques. There's more quicker digital alternatives now, and but to learn the traditional principles and disciplines of animation, it's really good to learn those fundamentals to apply to digital animation and all that. So once you have that foundation, then you can move on to the digital stuff, which is a lot quicker.
It's almost like learning jiu-jitsu before learning MMA. So you kind of have that positional strategy base that you can work off.
Right? You must bump into people in your industry that don't have that classic training. They just kind of wanted to get in animation and started in with the technical side. Mm-hmm. Is that difficult for them without having like an artistic base, knowing how to draw or?
You don't tend to get that so much in like the animation industries because nobody can just jump straight in and do animation. It's one of the art disciplines that requires the most amount of training. Okay. And so it's not really something that crops up that often.
Just big respect for animation. Right, even we had a guest here called the Barefoot Doctor, and he's got a big thing coming at the end of the year. You won't be here, otherwise you should come with us. It's called The Big Ohm. It's on December 12th. And he has a little animation on his website showing the whole thing. I thought it was great, and I was like, wow, that must have taken a long time to do. And so
it's a lot of fun, though. It feels like you're God making all these things come to life. And
that's cool.
It's one of the hardest disciplines to learn. It's one of the most rewarding as well, I found.
Can't you animate London Real, Brian? Forget all this video editing stuff.
If we could
some of these.
Dude, we need animation of London Real. We got a week.
Let's do it. We'll pull a few all-nighters and get it done.
We had a couple questions from some of your people. I think we covered them actually. One of our fans and critics, Simon Robinson, who is eternally making fun of us as we switch from ayahuasca to picking up women. He asked about how your creative process changed as a result of working with ayahuasca, which I think Nick also asked you about. And I think we touched on that. But one quick question from Travis Nobles. He said, what artwork do you think most closely resembles or communicates the visual aspects of the ayahuasca experience?
I think there's a lot of great artwork that is inspired by ayahuasca and the psychedelic experience. It's and that it strikes me more as that artwork inspired from it. It's quite rare to come across one that is exactly as the ayahuasca experience is, moment for moment. Who am I also to say that person didn't see that within the ayahuasca, because it's so different from each person.
But there are similar graphics from all these people.
It's like they've taken design elements from the experience and applied it to various artworks that they want to produce. If we talk about examples, I know one of the most popular ones is Alex Gray. And he makes these huge, big murals of artwork, and he has a certain message he's learned from the ayahuasca. He's using design elements he's learned from the ayahuasca, and it's all applied into one huge drawing that incorporates so many different elements. And
okay. Cool. Wow. And do you find that your lifestyle's changed, or your diet, or do you party more or less after the whole ayahuasca thing? Or how have you changed as a person?
Definitely less selfish as a person. With my artwork, it was all about how I could improve myself. And, you do come into a confrontation with the ego, and it sort of really does break it down and become a much less selfish person, more open to help others.
I wish you could have taken this brand of ayahuasca, Brian.
What's this?
This certain gentle, nice.
The less selfish-inducing one.
Man, I don't know where that came from.
I'm just messing
with you. Are you going to be living out of your backpack over the next 5 or 6 months? Is that something you're used to doing, or is that a new thing for you?
Yeah, it's kind of a new thing. I've always just lived in England, and then lived in houses, worked in animation. I've not lived out of a backpack that much.
Are you so exciting?
Yeah. Are you anxious of that? Are you looking forward to it?
A little bit, but what the ayahuasca has given me also, most of all, is just to go with the flow of things, not be such a control freak over it. Just allow the natural pattern of things to unfold. And it told me at times, don't try and control the current of the river. Don't fight against it. Just go with the current of the river, and that will give you more momentum to do what you want to do.
The art of letting go, right?
I think that the funny thing I was thinking about this morning is that the actual experience itself, it almost teaches you that. Because I remember when we just drank and we were waiting, I was meditating in the dark for 30 minutes, and it started hitting my cerebral cortex, and I was just like, it's just going to take you, and you've no choice where it's going to go. You got to let go, and you're not the tour guide tonight.
That's in what I also think perhaps what the shamanic singing, and I don't know if your shaman they use the shikapa, I think it's called.
These leaves. I believe, or the leaves, the leaves.
And I think what this does is if you go into an experience without that, your ego can sort of grab hold of it and try and not let go. But all these things just it's like a huge rushing river. It just sweeps.
What do you say to the old grandma and grandpa who are watching you from America, and they look at this dude that looks like you, that's talking about mushrooms and talking about ayahuasca, and they're like, you're not going anywhere near my son and daughter with these drugs. What do you tell them?
They're feeding into the cultural propaganda they have learned from these. These are hugely positive tools for us, for all of humanity, and they give us a great ability to heal ourselves and others, and really confront what we want out of life, give us good direction. And it's a great crime of the state, of our government, to separate us from this. And,
I couldn't agree with you more, man. Really, that is just...
when Graham talks about how losing the sovereignty over your own body, it's just really powerful when he talks about that. And whether we want to drink ayahuasca or not, but to argue against him for that argument seems very...
I think what he said is, if I'm not sovereign over my own mind, then I'm not sovereign over anything. We may not even talk about freedom. There's no point in it.
But for me, the thing that's even more concerning and that causes me more upset is the fact that not only are the good things restricted or prohibited, but the things that are proven to be bad for us, like sugar is an example, right? Sugar has been proven to suppress the immune system and cause dental caries and osteoporosis and a whole bunch of other things. But because Coca-Cola makes a bunch of donations to whatever fucking political party it has to to get the land it needs, to do what it needs to do.
People like sugar too.
You know, but people, it doesn't mean it's right, you know, and it's put in our face that, like, you know, we walk outside here and there'll be a billboard saying Coca-Cola, this is like, helps you have a better life, or whatever the current marketing slogan is. And that is promoted as the right thing. And it's kind of like everything that's right is wrong and everything that's wrong is right. We're living in an upside-down world.
Not so much what's right and wrong, what benefits the system we live in. You have things like caffeine, sugar, Coke, things that may be damaging. But
Religion.
But they're all a part of a system where it makes us work harder and faster. Caffeine, it's something that promotes the system we live in. If we have something like ayahuasca that makes us realize truths about ourselves, and we don't rely on government control, we don't rely on control of religion, but we're more independent as a person, this is something that doesn't benefit the system we live in. And
do you ever look at like the people in the jungles of Peru, and you're looking at them all, and they've been drinking ayahuasca all your life, and you're looking at you ever look at them and say, you need to get a job?
I knew you were going to say something.
I just wonder if you ever have a
what do
realization.
you contribute to society?
Because I was thinking, what's the GDP of Peru the other day? And I was like, how are you thinking of that?
Yeah.
But I was like, do you ever wonder and say, this has gone too far? Or do you think, I'm curious, do you ever get that perspective when you're like, wait a second, we're going too far in?
Well, I think it's also like you mentioned earlier, would I do the shamanic training myself? But I think it's no good if I hide away in the jungle taking this stuff. We need to bring this into our culture and how we can, you know, create a positive change in our culture, not just hide away in the jungle. And sorry, what?
No, I just thought of something else. Nick and I are reading a book called The War of Art, and it's all about, I don't know what it's about actually, but it's about trying to get your creative processes out and how a lot of us were put on this earth to do a certain thing, and not necessarily what you think we should be doing, but you know, and maybe that's what your thing is. Maybe your message is your job is to get this message out to these people.
Man, don't you see how the system that we live in, just as he was saying, like how it gets us to go fast and everything, the system has tricked us into believing that we are like a workhorse, like this functional unit that has to produce X amount of whatever, and that's not what our job is here. Or that's not what a job is the wrong word. That's not what our purpose is here. Our purpose is just to be here, right? I mean, do you really think a cat or a flower or a hawk gives a fuck about like how much money it has in its bank account, or whether it's got a retirement plan, or when its next promotion is at work? It doesn't, because it's living in the present moment. It's like so connected to everything. And I know that's a little bit extreme. You know, I have a bank account. We all have bank accounts, but I really think that's a huge fucking trick that's been played on society, you know?
I don't know. I think it's a half-empty cup, like way you look at things sometimes.
I'd love to know a better way. Can you tell me?
What us here talking about is a better way, you know? I don't think it's better to point to all the things that we can do as opposed to the way we're being oppressed, you know?
That's true, yeah.
And I just think that's what we're doing right now, which is talking about some of these things. And I do think you have to do something that the population isn't doing to find a greater enlightenment. But that means doing ayahuasca or going somewhere and doing something completely different.
Mm. I mean, that has cropped up quite a bit in my ayahuasca ceremonies, just putting all this effort into my job and my work, and it just comes up like, why am I even doing this? You know, it's just, I should do things that make myself and others happy, and not trying to
So you can buy more stuff that you don't even need or want.
Exactly, man.
Yeah.
Fight Club.
Fight Club.
And is that the answer you give yourself? I mean, do you have an answer to that, or does it keep coming up in your ceremonies of why are you doing this commercial side of your art?
Yeah, I mean, it's all something we need to do in order to live in the system that we're in. We need to produce artwork, need to get a job so that we can live comfortably in this life. But there comes a point where you just become consumed by this mentality too much, and it's time to take a step back and really do what's going to make you happy in life, I think.
Okay, well, we guys got just a few minutes left. Alexander, is there anything that you wanted to talk about that we didn't cover as far as what you're doing or how people get in touch with you as well?
Can we have an ayahuasca Jesus blessing? That's what I don't know. Why use Jesus and ayahuasca?
I had this so much I just came back from Africa, and I had this whole Jesus look going on, and so many Africans pulled me aside and it's like, are you actually Jesus?
Really?
No, man, I'm not.
You're like,
It
yes.
got really crazy.
Jesus was a black man.
You think you'd be this pasty white guy like me? But no, one woman even asked for a blessing, and it just like got pretty crazy.
See, I was
just bless her. That's how it starts. That's how.
I did say
how he started. I'm sure.
I started to talk about how Christ is just this consciousness that is inside us, and the only one that can really bless yourself is you. And she goes, no. I just want you to tell me that I'll be okay. like, oh, I'm sorry, I didn't mean to presume. I didn't know being Jesus was that easy, and
I guess
you'll be okay.
we all just want someone to tell us that we're going to be okay.
Do you think people are looking for like a leader to take us there sometimes, as opposed to be giving the answer you gave them, which is to look inside of you?
I think so. I mean, a lot of people aren't willing to face things about themselves, and they would rather project these problems onto someone else and have them drag them through the problems that they may be in, I think.
What if ayahuasca ceased to exist tomorrow? What would you do with the rest of your life?
What would I do?
Yeah.
That's a good question.
That is a good question. Can I keep the values and lessons I've learned from the ayahuasca already?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Well, it'll just be, I mean, as I said, this ayahuasca is not the end goal. It's how you deal with the information you've been given and how you provide that back into society at large.
You want to spread the message, is what you want
Spread the
to do.
message, yeah.
Right. So, I mean, Brian, were you maybe asking like more practically what his actual, if he couldn't go to the jungle and film an ayahuasca documentary, what would he be doing?
Yeah, or what would your purpose be, really?
What would my purpose be? Spreading positiveness in my own unique way, whether that be through art, making films, or just bringing people together.
That's cool.
Oh, that's very cool.
Yeah.
Can I just mention quickly, you said if there's anything I want to mention to people getting into this ayahuasca, and I would say, to those people unwilling to accept change, that they should not really take ayahuasca, because you can't really proceed through life as you once did after you've taken such a thing. It really throws a spanner into your works. I used to be a concept artist for video games, and now that's changed quite a bit now.
You don't have no interest in doing that
I have to make
anymore?
a new direction. There comes a point, and it's just like I can't anymore produce my art for plastic toys and all this sort of thing.
That's good advice. Yeah, we had a guy, actually Simon Robinson, who he saw our pre-ayahuasca episode, and we had one episode called Ayahuasca Challenge, right? Where Nick was like, "Come on, we got to do this," and he was like, "I don't want you guys going into the wrong way." A lot of people are like, ayahuasca, bring it on.
Before you had the ayahuasca?
Yeah, he'd send us an emails, and he's like, you don't want to be like, ayahuasca, bring it on. And I agree, that is the wrong frame to go in. And you definitely need to go in wanting to go in and wanting to look inside, because if you're thinking, I'm going to take on ayahuasca, I'm guessing that's probably not the way you want to walk into that ceremony.
Yeah, I think so.
All right, so they can find you at, Waterworks is your
Yeah, just
website?
Alexander at waterworks.co.uk.
Okay, or on Facebook,
Yeah.
Waterworks and all that stuff.
Yeah.
Did we miss anything?
I don't think we did.
Okay, good. We just want to send a shout out to Graham Hancock and Luke Hancock. We've been communicating with them, and I know you've done some work with him. So hopefully we'll get Graham on the show and just get into his head a bit. That would be fantastic. So thanks to you for coming on.
Thanks for having me.
It breezed by as usual.
It really did. I thought I was going to get into some ayahuasca experiences and talk about them.
I know. Well,
we'll do it off camera.
Yeah, and we can have you back in about 6 months too.
Sure.
So until then.
It's about the journey.
And can't stop, won't stop. London Real. All right, guys, take care.